Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's your boy Nigel. I'm back here with Zach. What's going on, Zach?
Morning. How you doing?
Morning.
I see you drinking coffee.
Nah, sweet tea.
Sweet tea in a mug.
Yeah.
That's some hood stuff there.
Indeed, baby. I'm dying, man. All right. So we got a long tough movie to talk about this time. And I say we just get into it first.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we watched Schindler's List. My second time watching this. It's your first.
Right. My
And
first.
you've been kicking that can down the road. I guess for a good reason, right?
For years. Like years. I remember when I first got Netflix. It was on Netflix for free and I could have watched it. And it was on my list and it was just sitting there for years.
Just staring at you.
I'm like, eventually, I know it's going to be a hard watch, but eventually. And here we are in 2024, years later. It's like, all right.
So I'm curious, before you watched it, what did you hear about it? Like, what made you put it off?
The funny thing about Schindler's List, it's one of those movies where everybody I said, every time I told somebody I'd never seen it, they're like, oh, you never seen it? You got to see it. And I'm like, all right, well, tell me about it. They're like, good movie. Hard watch, man. And no one would go into detail. That's all they were. For years, that's all anybody said. Ooh, that's a tough one. Literally, after our last podcast, you told me to watch this, and I was talking to somebody a couple nights later. It was at a party at the studio that I work with, and the guy was like, we were talking about film, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you seen Schindler's List?" I was like, "Nah." He's like, "Good movie. It's a tough one, man." I was like, "Yeah, I gotta watch it because I gotta talk about it for a podcast." He was like, "Ooh, yeah, it's a tough one, but you'll like it." But ooh, I was like, "Yo, you're not making it any easier, bro." Like,
No,
so
it's one of
yeah,
those ones. You know how like people like build up the anticipation for it, and the anticipation's worse than watching it. Watching
yeah,
it, I think, was worse than the anticipation for you from how you
yeah, man. Because that's all
tell people
anybody
how
would
you
tell me.
responded to it. I want to because I want to get as much context for it as possible before we actually like break it down, right? Because it's just fascinating because this is like one of the movies of our time, like us growing up, right? 90s and all that stuff. Like this is like one of the big ones, right? And I guess because now I guess there's just lack of interest in people watching it or need to watch it or whatever the case is, especially given how long it is and all of that. So I wondered your thoughts.
I also wonder if it's just an age thing, like the the stuff that we've watched now is considered old and vintage. We're
So
at
I'm
that
that old.
age. Not to us, but there's certain movies I talk to younger people and they're like, "Oh, that's like in Civil War. Remember, Spider-Man was like, remember that old movie, the one with the the walkers and the ats?" I'm like, you mean Star Wars? Dear God, I'm old. And that came out a
Yeah.
little before
I
me,
see. I have
bro.
the gateway to like Gen Z, right? Because
Mhm.
my wife's a teacher, and just some of the stuff they say, I'm like, oh gosh. Like, what's funny now? Like, they consider classic cars or like ones that they're interested in, or like that early 2000s, like Hondas and late 90s Toyotas and stuff. I'm like,
Dear
this is the
God.
crap you're interested in? Like an '04 Maxima? You're not interested in like.
Oh four, that's classic, baby. It's like my boy got an oh 04 Maxima, bro. Like he, not because he wants it. That's all he can
it's
afford.
it's the it's the Fast and the Furious age, right? Like, it's the I
Yeah.
think and a lot of it is because it's affordability. It's what you're able to get into. So people like, I'm gonna mess around with it and tune it and do all that other stuff, right? And they drive like idiots in it because it's $500 and who cares if they wreck it. But the point is, it's that 90s and 2000s thing. I would think they would be ultimately interested in movies, and they're not.
And there's people I know who will not watch black and white movies at all, like at all. They won't
Why?
even touch it just because they feel it's too old.
So Sin City,
They just won't touch it.
it's
Which
whack.
it's like, and I'm like, you do realize there are some black and white movies that are new. They just are in black and white, like
They
Sin
do it for
City.
a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe I'm just a cinephile, and I don't know. But to answer your question, bro, like there were multiple times while watching this. This is 3 hours and 15-minute movie where I had to stop watching. I would just have to turn it off, take a breather, take a walk, you know, do something, And I'm just like,
You know
all
that
right.
meme with SpongeBob when he's naked and he's holding next to the rock and he's just breathing like like that.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, it's like it doesn't even this movie doesn't go as hard as it could have, but it goes hard enough to where it's
I
like,
watched it in one sitting. I didn't stop.
man, you're a brave man. You're a
That's how I
brave
am.
man. That
That's
is
how I
true.
am.
Whenever you got to do something, you just power through it. Whether it's a video game, a movie, or
Remember
whatever.
when right before the Matrix came out, the fourth
Oh,
one, and I watched the entire trilogy in a day? You're
I was
like,
like, how
are
did
you
your
sure
brain
that's a
not
good
melt?
idea?
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
I'll tell you, each movie's like 3.5 hours long. That was rough. That was tough. That was
Yeah,
tough
bro.
because I'm
That's
sitting through
especially
this.
two and three.
Yeah, it feels like it's the same movie.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is everybody's like all the humans act like robots,
Yeah,
but
it's like
all the robots and the programs act like humans, and people are like, that's the point. I'm like, yeah, but when your main character has no emotion, it's kind of hard to get into
differentiate. Right, that's the whole
it.
point. Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I get why they did that. It's just a
It's rough.
that
It's
was
rough.
tough.
And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, what machines? I gotta go to Machine City." Like they have whole scenes where people are just like, "I gotta go to Machine City." Why do you have to do that, Neo? I got to. I want to go with you. I'm like, come on, man. I need some emotion. I need some inflection in somebody's voice. I need it, man. Dear God, because I believe in you. I'm the one. It's just rough. But yeah, I had to like stop watching a couple times, and it's a rough movie. It's a movie so rough that Steven Spielberg, the director himself, was just trying to lobby all his famous director friends into directing in every single one. Even if they thought about it, they're like, you know what, bro, you need to do it. A Jewish guy needs to do it. You need to do it. And he went to other Jewish directors and he was like, nah, we think you're the guy. You know.
So he picked these parts for a reason. Oscar Schindler's was Catholic. Liam Neeson's Catholic. And there was a reason behind the casting for all of this stuff. Now, given Ray Fiennes' position, you're like, oh great, because he kind of looks like one. It helps that he looks like a villain, in
Yeah,
terms of his features and how he
that jawline.
expresses himself and all that. But I mean, just on an ethnic level, like yeah, he's English, but his family's like from South Africa or like Netherlands or something. So he's got that look, right? He's got the way to like pull the part off. So I I'm glad he's not remembered for this, right? Like you can think of like five other movies besides this one he's done, and they're really good. Like you don't want to
Yeah,
be that one guy who's like the
the Nazi forever,
the Nazi
the
killer
worst
because
of them all.
Christoph Waltz was just so outlandish with his like on purpose, right? He did it like it was just so out of control with Inglorious Bastards. Like even though it was insane and it was like it's believable. It's like how that's how some of those dudes acted. Like it seemed like he was just faking and just reaching for all of this theatrics. But I think that was the point in that role, and I think there was definitely some motivation or inspiration from this because you kind of start seeing parallels between the two, and you're like, oh, okay, I see it.
Fun fact: Tarantino almost didn't make the movie because he couldn't find the right actor, to play Waltz's role, and then Waltz came in and auditioned. He's like, "This is the guy." I can continue this movie.
It helps
So,
that Waltz is German, so he doesn't
mhm.
have to like learn how to speak German, you know,
Right.
or Austrian, whatever the two, virtually same thing, right? Like the
Hmm.
speak the same language. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not to digress, but no. So me coming in, I already knew what I was getting myself into, right? Obviously, there were some pieces that were a little like iffy, like I don't remember this or that or whatever it was, and I like a couple things first. More than anything, was it was as close to the source material you're going to get,
Hmm.
right? Without being, I mean, it was graphic, but it wasn't in a way that, you know, they could have gotten a lot more detailed with everything in general, right? In terms of evicting everyone from the ghettos and moving them into camps at that point. You know, like they only had a couple scenes of shooting people and the selection for that. Like, you know, it was a multi layered process that one, this isn't taught right in school anyway, this whole thing, right? Like, that's one of the crusades that my wife's on for good reason is that this isn't taught the way that it should because when people like when you talk about it with people are like, oh, I didn't know that. Me and you've talked about it, like basic things, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, well, you know, that's our school system failing versus any fault of any one person, right? But this kind of like summarizes it and does a good job of giving you the Cliff Notes version, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It, like you said, it doesn't hit as hard as it could, but it hits pretty fucking hard. And there's a lot of headshots, and they show it. They don't mince it. And the interesting thing about this movie is they show the headshots, but they also show the way they direct it. Well, Spielberg directed. They show the headshots with the actor's face to show how, when they die and stuff. Usually, when you see headshots, it's like bang, the camera's behind the person's head. You don't see him. The shock is like, oh, the guy shot. But no, they wanted you to feel it, so they showed the actor still acting as they got shot in the head. A lot of times, it's tough, man. Like it's crazy, man. Like the little shit that you get shot over or whatever. It's just crazy. But I know some of it was shot by Kubrick, and then Kubrick handed it over to Spielberg. Was like, you know what? I'm not right for this film. You should just direct it. Much to Spielberg's dismay, because he just wanted to be a producer from jump. And he kept trying to shop it around, and I felt bad for this guy. Even though he did a great job and stuff, he like the set was so depressing. He would have to watch Seinfeld at the end of every day just to get into better spirits.
Yeah. So, all right, let's. I'm curious. Uh, do you think any of the actors, especially ones who were playing the guards or who were playing Nazis or whatever, do you think it started to change them? You know, um,
I would
I'm
think
going to look
so.
up a psychological like study. Always forget the name. It was a Stanford experiment, but who was this? Who was the professor that did that?
Which experiment?
Stanford prison experiment. So what it is that
Oh yeah,
what it
I know
is
that
I
one.
split the class into half prisoners, half prison guards. And the ones who were prison guards actually thought they were prison guards, and they started beating these actual like students with them on
They made a movie out of this. Fun fact.
yeah. Um, let's see. It's kind of like that. That's what I'm kind of. Hold on, I'll tell you right now.
Mhm.
71 Philip Zimbardo. That's right. So, if anyone doesn't know, Philip Zimbardo was a psychology professor at Stanford University, right? And then the premise was that you would split the class into prison guards or prisons, just to give you an idea, kind of like how prisoners were treated, right? And then on the oncoming days, the people who were selected to be prison guards ended up actually taking on the role of the prison guards and started doing some insane things to the students who were pretending to be prisoners. And it was just different, right? And it really started to show human conditioning and all of that. So I'm kind of curious if the actors kind of went through a similar thing.
Oh no, I don't think so. Because when you're an actor, for sure you are an actor. Well, the stable ones, some actors are like, yeah, you call me this name forever. Nah, like you're an actor, you're doing your job. I'm sure it changed them in a way that they became more empathetic to it, or they became more educated to what happened. Because you're
Hmm.
talking about a guy like Steven Spielberg. He one of the reasons he wanted this movie made is because of all the anti-Semitic stuff that was going on in the '90s, and how some people just didn't believe this even happened. So
And
he
that's a
really.
whole nother thing, right? Is how do
Hmm.
you convince? I mean, it's already unbelievable. People don't think this happened, or they dramatically think it was not as large scale that it was. Like, how do you? How is him? Like, how do you approach that?
I think you do what you do best, and what he does best is tell stories. He's a director, right? And so he was like, because it's funny because I saw looking stuff up about it, like how people was like, all you had to do was just donate to the show foundation. You didn't have to spend millions of dollars to make one of the hardest watchable movies of all time. But he wanted to do it. He wanted to do it this way because that's the best way he knows how to help the cause and to bring awareness. And I do think there's something to say about a movie that can bring awareness to a topic that people don't know about. So that was his decision to do this. He didn't want to direct it, but push came to shove. He did it. And you made a point earlier that this isn't really taught the right way in schools. And I just want to shout out a teacher of mine in high school. I don't think he was supposed to teach us this, but Mr. Gian Santi, shout out to you, man. This guy, when it came to slavery in America and the Holocaust, this guy did not mince words. He did not hold back, because when kids are dumb, right? They joke about stuff. They make certain jokes, and someone made a joke about the way somebody looked, and he was like, "Oh hell no!" So he showed us pictures. He brought books that weren't given to us by the school, and he just did not, like, literally. I will never forget. I went to a military school. Like, dude, some of the hard dudes who were making all the jokes. Some of these dudes had to walk out of the class because they was crying because they ain't believe this. Like, they ain't never seen nothing like that before. So shout out to him. There are still good teachers out there. Like, I had a professor like that too, and in college. I forget his name, but he was just like buff Jewish guy, curly gray hair, one of the coolest dudes. But he kept it real in every single one of his classes. So it is a point that, like, you know, there needs to be awareness of this. And there was a quote in the movie by Eamon Goth, the guy Rafe Fiennes plays, and he says,
You
like,
butchered his name, but it's close enough.
yeah, I always butcher names. He says something along lines like, he gives a speech. Jews came here with nothing. They came here with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They worked hard and they became very successful. And this 600-year history, we're going to destroy as if it never happened. And I was like, damn, does that sound like something that's been said recently? Hmm? With all this burning the books in schools, or banning books in schools, and banning history of peoples, sounds pretty familiar in 2024. This is why a lot of people who are um, older Jewish people who are older black people who say the way certain states, I'm looking at you, Florida, the way y'all are doing things ain't right. You know, when you try to hide history and you try to hide knowledge, you're going in the wrong direction.
I
All right.
saw a couple things like I do agree with that, right? But I think there needs to be boundaries of stuff like in public school in general because they're public schools like yes there is definitely supposed to be a openness for knowledge and understanding and all that stuff but there are limitations to what you can and can't understand at a certain level right especially as a minor and this particular subject right has a tendency to be misconstrued or flat out denied and I think
Mm-hmm.
there is a larger group of people, or if this is probably not the subject, it's one of the subjects that's probably like the greatest in terms of denial, in terms of human history, right? Of that didn't happen. Like I was listening to something on the History Channel. It was like a random. I just flipped the channel, right, and some dude was starting to talk about how the Middle Ages didn't exist, like the Magna Carta didn't exist. Charlemagne didn't exist. This was all made up by the Catholic Church, the bridge history between the ancient times and modern history. And really, we're in like the year 1600 and some change, right? I was like,
Right.
what the heck is this? Like, how do you even have, it's like, how do you even have the capacity to say this on like a TV show, right? But the thing is, you hear enough of this nonsense in this type of like space, right? Where it's, and then you have books that kind of like, argue with the fact for it. I mean, look, Tucker Carlson was making the argument, he on his podcast a few days ago about who was the bad guy in World War II. Maybe if Britain didn't end up declaring war on Germany, Germany wouldn't have had the need to invade and do all this stuff, right? And it's like, where are we getting this revisionist history from? Like, it blows my mind, right? On like basic
Yeah.
stuff, but I mean, I see it online. I know Twitter and Facebook and Instagram is just fake stuff, right? But you start seeing enough of it to where it's upsetting that you actually have like a large group of people who, you know, it's like believing the moon landing was faked. Or if the earth's flat, I'll give you a better example that this stuff didn't happen or it didn't happen the way that it could have or any of this other stuff, right? And yeah, so I feel like when you're talking to someone about this, it's like abortion, right? You get very emotional. It's not very logical. It's tough to really even spit any kind of real logic in it, right? Because the antithesis of any kind of facts that people think that they're against it or didn't happen, the whole point for them is just to get under your skin, so you start getting emotional and you're not saying anything, right?
Mm.
Um, but that's my diversion on the school thing. So I'm curious on this, right? It's 3 hours, 15 minutes. Do you think it needed to be shorter, or do you think this was enough time?
So I'm watching it. You know, I analyze stuff. Um, I think you could have shortened a little bit of the beginning. The beginning was about what's his name was setting up Oscar Schindler's like personality per se. Obviously, it showed what was going on and with the ghettos and stuff like that, but mostly it was about Oscar Schindler and showing how he's like the guy. He's like the charming guy. He's the rich guy. He likes to sleep around. He's married. Um, but it shows how he's just how he calculated in a calculated way. He got close to to the Nazi party. He made sure he knew all the generals and all the
Well, he
guys who
wasn't
are
just close; he
important.
was a ranking member of the party.
Yep,
That's a
yep,
different
and
thing. Like we can't. Let's not conflate the two. There's a big difference between the two, where you sympathize versus someone who is an actual member.
exactly. And it the setup was to be like, look, this guy in the beginning was simply a shrewd businessman who only wanted to fill his pockets. Like he was just a guy who wanted to get rich, and that's what happened. Like this movie is ultimately about how he became a shrewd businessman, but slowly turned into a humanitarian. And even at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, this
Not
movie's
even
from '93.
slowly. I mean, it's only a couple years span if you think about
Yeah,
it. So
yeah,
he had to start making very difficult choices for his well being and everything else very quickly. And how was he going to do that while maintaining the image that he is a ranking member of the Nazi party, right? And they wouldn't catch on to what he was doing
yeah,
versus like playing it off that, hey, I'm trying to keep as many people alive as humanly possible because they see it. He knows. It's not like he doesn't know where these people go and get deported, right?
right,
It's the worst, best kept secret. Even America knew, even before they entered the war, that these places existed and started exterminating people. And look, it wasn't just Jews; it was a whole lots of people, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, take your pick. But um, for this
black
particular
people
thing,
too.
he had to make a choice. How am I going to protect everyone the way that he could, right? And um, it got to a point where he couldn't. He had to start paying off a lot of people, right? And that turned into a different thing while maintaining the face that he was doing it solely for the fact that he wanted to make money instead of that he cared about these people.
Yep, that was, and to me, that was his reasoning for doing it because at his core he just wanted to make money. He wanted to be a successful man. He wanted to be the man. But something happened to him that he didn't realize was that he was feeling empathy for these people. He wasn't agreeing what was happening to him. So the way to rationalize it in his mind, it was like, wow, I just had a brain fart. But to rationalize in his mind, what he was doing was in the best interest of business. But by the end, he he knew what he was doing. By the end, to the point that his factory wasn't producing weapons like it was supposed to by his account. And then he was like, you know what, I'll just buy weapons from someone else and say it came from us so we can just, survive. Because I don't want to make a weapon to support this war, basically. So by the end, he went a full turnaround and was like, I'm against all this, but I'm going to stay a Nazi member and I'm going to stay close to these guys just so I can play the game, you know?
It
And I
went
do think
broke
he got
doing
like
it.
a sick pleasure out of it. Yeah. He went bankrupt saving as many lives as he could. And that's, I mean, at the end of the movie, I thought it was powerful how, I know I'm skipping around, but I love how he, at the end, was like announcing to them, the war's over, this, that, and the third. And then he was like, as you know, I'm a Nazi party member. I will be hunted by tomorrow. So midnight tonight, 5 minutes after midnight, I will leave you because I must go on the run. And I'm like, damn, like you forget about that. But even though you forget about that, remember he wore that Nazi party pin every single day, every scene to remind you, hey,
I mean,
I'm
he was
still a Nazi
forgiven
member.
ultimately anyway. It's not like, I mean, once it kind of came out after the war, what he did, there was, he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
commemorated by Israel for all of the things that he did. Like, he pretty much got every single humanitarian, like, civil award that a civilian could win in Israel, he got,
Mm-hmm.
like, even to where he's buried, right? Like,
Yep.
it's a,
And he died a broke man, lost his wife, lost all his businesses.
well, he left his wife, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Oh, he left his wife. Oh.
Yeah, he left his wife in Argentina, and he went back to Europe, and then the Jews that he saved supported him till he died in the 70s. I want to say,
Mm, okay.
um, which is fine. It's
Yeah, yeah.
is what it is.
He never should have
So,
been married.
well, it was strange for people not to be married, right?
True, that's a different time. Different time.
Yeah, so you can rationalize cheating on your wife a million different ways because you're like, well, I have to be married.
She knows what I'm doing.
Oh, come on. She talked about it, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, she
oh,
knows.
you spooked her. You would like her, and when she was in the
I know.
apartment.
She's a very nice girl. I was like, oh, okay, bro. It seemed like
All
she
right.
was more bothered to the fact that people mistook her for one of his girls instead of his wife. That was really what bothered her
Yes.
instead of the actual cheating.
Yes. Yes.
Different times, different times. You know,
So the movie as a whole, because I want to separate the movie from the actual story. We can go into the story and all the background forever and ever. The movie as a whole, do you think this movie could have been bad, even though how powerful the story is?
I mean, I think any
Do you get
movie,
what
no
I'm
matter
saying?
what.
Because I feel like people confuse a great, powerful story, and they're like, "Ah, you can make anything out of it. It's going to be good no matter what," which I don't think is true.
Nah, I don't think it's true. If you hand it to the wrong person, you know, it could be bad. I mean, there's a director that I want to talk about in the topics who just churns out horrible movies back to back, and you look back and you're like, "Yo, this was the blueprint. It should have been good." But I feel like if you don't have any kind of story, no matter what it is, you can ruin it. So I feel like there was a lot against this movie. This I feel like this is a movie where there's a lot of pressure on it and a lot of pressure to get it right and to do it justice and to be done right and to be culturally empathetic to its people and the people that it's based on. This is a movie that's based off the book Schindler's List, and
Arc.
and it's about um, it's basically all these people who went through this. They gave their accounts to the author, and he made a story around it. You know, so this is
Lots of
like
work involved in that, by the way.
exactly. So you got to be sensitive to what you put on, especially when you're making a movie. Sensitive to what you put on screen based on the source material when it's actual events that happen to people and it's something this tragic and something this sensitive. You gotta be careful, and I feel like he nailed it, and I feel like everybody who was involved agrees that he did it justice. And I think this is a what's it called, I think this is a theme of Spielberg himself. I talked about it before, where I said that a director should be emotionally intelligent. That's one of the requirements of a director to really get things right. When you hear about Steven Spielberg with Schindler's List, with The Color Purple, with Amistad, you know, this is a guy who's
Saving
talked to
Private
people.
Ryan.
Saber Private Ryan. This is a guy who talked to people around him and listened to them like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. He made
Dude,
movies. Go
I
ahead.
agree. I agree. No, the thought just came in my head. Like all those movies you just listed. What a portfolio! How many people in their career make one of those? And he made like 5 or 6.
Yeah. And some of those movies, he wasn't a part of the time, he wasn't a part of the culture, but he listened to the people around him. He like The Color Purple. He didn't want to do that movie because he thought African
Did he do
Americans
the
should have
second
done it.
one?
Which one? What are you talking about?
Color Purple. Didn't they make it? Did they remake that recently?
No, he didn't do the remake.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
about. I thought so because the remake was kind of.
yeah, we talked we talked about that offline.
He's a lot
But
of things, but he's not pandering.
exactly, like he wants to get it right. He wants people's like stories to be told the right way. This is a guy, like I said, he's emotionally intelligent, and he knows what he's doing behind the camera. So I'm not surprised that he's churned out 5 good movies, even though he wasn't there or he wasn't part of the culture. He's done it right. So I think all his friends were right. He was the right guy for this movie, and I know it was a struggle for him. He it was so bad, like so depressing on set. He asked Robin Williams to come out and do stand up comedy for the cast and crew multiple times, and a lot of that material he used, Robin used for Aladdin later on as the genie. So I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. There wouldn't be an Aladdin genie without Schindler's List. There you go. So, but yeah, like, it was a heavy burden, but he was the right guy to do this movie. I don't know anybody else who could have. And if they did, it would have been a
I
different movie.
That's true, and I think he helps. You have to have a Jewish person make this,
Hmm.
and it's not just a Jewish person. You need to have surviving members of your family go through this and have this type of understanding, because you do have a fair amount of Jews whose families didn't have to go through this because they escaped those countries before this happened, right? Not everyone
Right.
was as lucky, and you're taking a risk coming over to America at the time, because America, yeah, they weren't going to kill you or throw you in a camp, but you were ostracized and persecuted for being Jewish in America at that time too. So it's, you're kind of taking, you're just getting one with the other, robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of like your safety, right? But I liked I like that he has that background, and you're right. There couldn't have been anyone else. If the movie was different, it wouldn't have the same effect, right? Because I feel like people would have made the mistake of paying attention on too much on like the death part, right? And make it way more
Right.
gritty and nasty and all that. And it's just to show the ugliness of it without explaining why. Because he did a good job, because it wasn't, yeah, of course he's showing the Jews and the people who are like persecuted and thrown in there, but he spent a lot of time on the Nazis' point of view as well. You have to frame that, because these are very intelligent men. It's not like these dudes were just like some hicks somewhere with a grade level education. These guys had PhDs from the top universities. Like these are highly respected military officers and military for their achievements and stuff in previous wars. Like these guys were no jokes. Like they were smart. How do you get everyone to buy into this on such a mass scale, right? And he did such a good job showing that on such a micro level. The part that I think resonates with me, right? Well, there's a couple parts. One, when Amon is talking to his slave, so to speak, his indentured servant at a minimum, Jewish girl, I
Yeah.
forget her name, Helena, I think, or something.
Helen Hirsch.
Yeah, Helen. Thank
I
you,
think Helena Hirsch or
Helen.
something like that.
Yeah, Helen Hirsch. Yes. Um, Oscar was saying, hey, like, just remember how he feels about you and how he sees you, and she didn't believe him. It's like, you don't have to wear the star. He doesn't want anyone to know any of these things about you, you know.
Mm.
And even though that might be for a disgusting reason, like just be cognizant of that, right? Because you could be out there. While to me that there's a villa overlooking this entire camp, and they're killing, I mean, this is not a kill camp. All right. This is not an extermination camp. This is a camp majority for labor where a lot of people died. But this was like places where they would send them to extermination camps. So let's just, and there's different levels of camps back, for that. You had labor camps, you had POW camps were specifically meant for prisoners of war. And then you had the extermination camps like Auschwitz, Dachau, those are the big ones. Those are the ones that people were pretty much sent to die within 2 to 3 months from arriving. You didn't have a lifespan beyond that, you
Right.
know? So I really appreciated the fact that he did this, and he was rationalizing like, oh, these Nazis see Jews as rats, as not even people, as like literal objects for whatever,
Yeah.
and how he has feelings, and he's doing this monologue where he's talking for her, and she's not even speaking at all, and he's like, yeah, I understand, I get it, and he's just going back and forth having that rationalization, and that was just so well done, right? It reminded me of a Broadway play. You know how like
Mm.
someone like does like the part of like five different characters and they're all talking, like that's what it reminded me of, right?
Yeah, where they're talking out loud to the audience, their inner monologue,
And that's
so
what
you
he was
can get what's
doing.
going on. Yeah, crazy man. Like he even said during that monologue, he was like, "And you made me treat you this way. You made me do this." And he just starts beating her. I'm like, "What the?" Like, what the hell, bro? Like, this man is just pure evil. And it even shows like how Schindler tried to. He was like, he thinks to himself, "I'm gonna get to this guy with like
Flattery,
philosophical, like flattery and philosophical, like
logic.
flipping the script. Yeah, like I'm gonna logic this
He was
guy."
like, you
So
know,
he
it's more
tried to logic him.
powerful if you kept these people alive, right? And he tried, like that kid who
He
didn't,
tried,
who
yeah,
he tried for one, and then the kid who was in the bathroom, he's like, I couldn't get the stains out. You think you're letting him go, but he ended up shooting him when he was
yeah.
leaving.
He's just a monster. He's just evil dude, man. Like to the core.
I mean, there was a reason why the Polish did not wait for the Nuremberg trials for that dude.
Right.
And they executed him literally in front of the camp, which is, I think, that's poetic justice at its finest, right?
Mm.
And where they filmed this, I don't know how familiar you are with like production, dude. They filmed this like as close as they can at these places.
Yeah, in Poland.
Can you imagine these actors who are like, he picks people who are meant for that, like he's picking Jews for this stuff, right? Like it's not like he's not picking people who aren't correct for the roles.
Some of
Just
those actors were actually at the Holocaust in those camps, like the older ones, and they would
Isn't
just
that
have like
wild?
panic attacks. it's
They're sitting in these
crazy.
places where they had to relive all of that.
It's crazy.
And I'm going to give you my memorable parts. You'll give me yours, and then we can talk about other stuff because it's just depressing. All right, so I got three. So I already named one. One
Mm.
of the other memorable parts was when they were shipping the kids off, and the kids were in the trucks. They had no idea where they're going. They were waving their families, and their
They think they're
families, like
going
the
for
moms, were
a
all
fun
chasing them,
ride.
and their moms were chasing them, and their moms knew where they were going, but the kids didn't, right? And the ones that survived, like hid, you had them in the sewage, you had them in the
Yeah, bro.
floorboards and all that, right? Like, and they were just like praying, like, oh no, he's smart enough. He would have found a way to hide. And I thought it was great that they didn't have to show those kids showing where they're going. That's enough. You already know
Because
what's going to happen. That was
yeah,
enough, right? And I mean, as a parent, right? Both parents seeing that, at the end of the day, it hits me because my son would have been selected for this stuff, right? I would have, Heather would have. And it's powerful in the sense for me because I had family in this. It's not
mhm.
like it's, distant family. We're talking, as close to the immediate family as possible, talking about my grandfather's family. So it's like, it's tough for me because I have firsthand understanding of how it went. And I see this, and it's like I'm seeing it from another perspective that had it worse. We're talking about your kid, and you're talking about your wife or your husband or your brother or whoever, and I'm like, as a parent, like, can you imagine just seeing your kid? You take it off and that's
No,
it. You're never seeing them. A kid has no business being part of that just because of how they were born. Like literally no business. The
yeah.
other
There's times
memorable
when I was watching this movie where I just wanted to go get my daughter. I was like, "Yo, you all right? Like, I know where you are. You're good. Like, real
George
rap."
was sitting with Heather and sitting in between us most of the time, and I kept looking at him at certain points. It was very hard. You already know how Heather was. Look, I'm already getting emotional about it, but
Yeah,
the other part for me was at the end when Oscar was at that point where he's like, "Look, I'm going to be hunted" and all this stuff, and he's talking to Ben Kingsley. He was like, I feel like I could have saved more. And Ben's like, no, no. There's 1,100 people or some change that owe their life to you. And then he's like, I could have sold this car. Amon could have bought this car. That would have been 10 more lives. I could have sold this ring. That's at least one more life, maybe two. He had the unbearable thing to actually put a price on a human life. Like, what is because Amon said, no, 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 it's not about what I want. It's what you're willing to put on
you.
their
Yeah,
head.
he had to propose a car game to save Helen, the guy's maid, Eamon's maid. Like he was like, and that scene also shows you how he would play mind games with the Nazi guys, because he was like, all right, he pulled out some cards. He was like, all right, look, you pull out a good hand, I'll pay 7,400 for her. You pull out a 21, I'll pay 1,400 for her. You know, or
Not
14,000. He said
100,000. Yeah, yeah,
14,000
just
for
get
her. Then he
$14,000,
said,
dude.
if I yeah, then he said if I win, you give it to me for free. But he said it so fast I didn't catch it until I put it back. I was like, oh, no matter what he did, no matter what Eamon did, he would always have to give the girl to him. So he would just like mess with people's heads like this. Like he was so good at that.
No, yeah, it's a zero sum game, right? On aim up, but
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. All right, and then the other memorable part for me too was remembering the women in their barracks. I'm saying this term loosely, but they're talking about how they're hearing about the gas chambers and stuff, and everyone's like in denial. It's like, why would they put us in these camps to work? Like we're helping the war effort. We're doing all of this just for them to kill us. And then when they actually get to diverted to Auschwitz by accident because of paperwork,
I turned it off after that. Like I had to take a breather. I literally turned it off. This is one of the parts I turned it off.
the
I took a
selection
break.
committee. So I'll tell you how this works. As soon as you get to Auschwitz, this is why it's the Mac Daddy of all of them.
Mm.
You're pretty much selected in one of three: someone who's able to work because you work, but you're on borrowed time. Someone who will be killed in the chambers pretty quick, right? Like you get sent to the chamber, or you're shot right there. So right off the bat, you have a 2/3 chance of not surviving more than 2 months. Assuming you're going to survive typhus outbreaks, you know, dysentery, any kind of disease you can think of, not being shot beforehand. And that's how those committees work, dude. And there's a survivor. Heather was telling me there's a survivor here that lives in Vegas, right? His family. And one of the stories that he saw was that I think it was cousin or something, or friend or cousin, whatever it is, doesn't matter. One of their kids was picked to be shot. It was a kid, shot right there. Right? Oh, look, Tether texted me. Stephen Nasser's the name, by the way. If anyone's interested, look up Stephen Nasser's story. It's fascinating. And yeah, dude, little girl, shot right there.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know, right? And so when they're at this camp, so when they're going into the showers, right, and they see the, inhalation sign and all that stuff, and they're like thinking this is it. And that denial, that light bulb goes off. They're like, you know what? This is real. Like that fear, like you saw the mothers holding their kids and all this, and they're just accepting the fact that they're going to die and everything. That was, and they did it. That was powerful stuff too.
Yeah, bro.
And you walk off the train and you see the factories. You think it's snowing because it's black and white, but it's human ash.
It's crazy, bro. That's one of those scenes where when they first show the ash of them burning and Schindler's just walking in the street, he's like, what the hell is this? And he brushes it off his car. And it reminded me of when I was a kid and I was singing that song, Ashes, Ashes, they all fall, Ring Around the Rosie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember it was either my mom or my dad was like, don't sing that song because it's about, the Holocaust. And I was like, what? And at the time I didn't know as a kid. And then I found a book in their room and I read it, and it was about the Holocaust that didn't mince any words. And I was like, all right, won't sing that song. So is that true? Is that song based on it?
No, because it came out way beforehand. I always thought it was about the bubonic plague, and they had to
Well,
burn.
damn.
They had to burn bodies because they contained diseases and stuff.
Either way, don't sing the song, boys and girls. It is bad news. Bad
It's
news.
been around a lot longer before the Holocaust even happened.
Oh, jeez.
So
It's
I
just bad
mean,
news anyway.
Yeah, it's bad no matter what. I mean, here it comes down to how people see it, right? If that's part of what people, if that's secular thought that it's about the Holocaust, then it's about the Holocaust. Then it doesn't matter what the original intent was, right? It's
It's
like
like the
curse words,
swastika.
right?
Remember, the swastika was a Buddhist sign meaning peace, and then the Nazi
The
party took it over.
swastika was a unit in the armies on their patch, dude. It was one of their emblems, and they had to change it for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, but so that part was just, and Ben Kingsley, I think, did the best out of anyone, dude. The dude killed it.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, that's Ben Kingsley. Oh, where? And Liam Neeson was unknown at the time. And what's his
Was
name?
he?
Yeah, at the time he was an unknown.
And
Didn't
then
think
he
he would
did
get the
Star
part.
Wars right after it
Yep.
because of
Yep.
this.
Probably.
Well,
He
Spielberg
did
and
such a
Lucas
good
are best
job.
friends, right? And he's like, you need him.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's wife, was the one who pointed out Neeson after a show on Broadway. Was like, that's the guy. You see what he did? That's something Schindler would do. You should hire him. And then he got the part after that. Because he already auditioned at the time. Didn't think he would get it. Took a show on Broadway, and the show on Broadway helped him seal the deal.
Right. My so this movie's great. I can't really say anything bad about it because it's just so well done. Even taking the personal stuff away from it, I um I wish it was a little longer to kind of show. You know how I am. I wanted to see some of the nasty just to show, like it has to. Like I think that human landfill that they had of 10,000 bodies after they butchered 10,000 people in that mass murder event and they were burning in, you saw Nazi soldiers like breaking because they're just committing so much murder. So a lot of the guards and stuff would get drunk every night and the Nazis would pay for it because they were just so broken because they killed so many people out of cold blood that they had PTSD from it. And he showed that, conveyed it. Isn't that
Jeez, bro.
wild? As here's the
Freaking
thing,
wild.
you don't even have to make this stuff up. The Nazis were so good with notes; they kept lists of everything. For whatever
Mm.
reason, they had you had to be organized to make sure you got everyone right. And it was very fascinating. Like if you kind of, and we were talking about this offline, some of the stuff that we're really not going to get into, like all the stuff they would do and all the things that came out of it was just so fascinating.
Yeah, man. It's
All right, your turn. Memorable moments, and let's talk about something good.
well, yeah, the Auschwitz part when they got to Auschwitz. You mentioned that. The end when he's talking about he could have saved more people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't turn it off at that part. I just couldn't look at the screen when he was saying that. I mean, that part that you're talking about when they're like they got the Jews moving the burned bodies of everybody, and I was like, I remember when they first started showing, I was like, that's the um another part when
Yeah.
I was like, wait, is that the
Germany would still find some of those mass burials every once in a while because there's so many of them in the woods.
Jesus Christ. The one part in that same scene when they're hauling off bodies, you just see the little girl with the red jacket. I'm like,
Comes full
fuck.
circle.
Jesus Christ. Even the first time you see that little girl with the red jacket is one part too, where it's from the perspective of Schindler and his girlfriend on their horses looking down. You just see all this chaos happening around this little girl with the red jacket, seeing people get shot, people getting chased, and you just watch them looking down in horror, and you just see all this going on in the middle of it, literally in the middle of the frame, just this little girl with a red jacket on. Like, Jesus, bro, it's crazy. All the times that you thought somebody was going to get away from the raids, and it turns out they just end up in a line. Like that little girl and her mom. The kid was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll get you in a good line." Leads them right to a line, man. Rough stuff, man.
All right,
It's rough
so
stuff.
that girl, that the one in the red jacket, came full circle because that was the only part that was in color the entire time.
Yeah.
This reminded me of the mass shooting at Babin Yar. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So this is like the largest mass shooting event during the Holocaust that was recorded anyway. 50,000 people were killed. One person survived. It was a little girl.
Jeez.
And she survived just because all the bodies were on top of her and she had to dig herself out.
I wonder if she's still alive. Probably not.
She was a little girl, probably not, but she was 5, by the way.
Jeez.
Yeah. I've always wanted to have a chance to like listen to her stories. I've listened to quite a few survivor stories in person, and it's like it's wild, dude. Because all of them were old, obviously, right? And they're just, but that's one thing that you can't ever forget. That stuff, right? Like that's seared into you in a million different ways from Sunday. And I feel like this is a top 10 movie of all time, man. Personally, just how well done it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's on like the list of movies you need to see before you die, for sure. Yeah,
And you don't have to see it again.
thank God.
All
Seen
right,
it once, don't gotta see it again.
everyone, go see it. At least if you haven't seen it. If you have, but it's been a long time, watch it. It'll give you some appreciation of what you got now.
Exactly.
So you got some stuff you want to talk about, dude. Some now. Tell me what's going on. What's some stuff you got?
First thing we gotta talk about. Last time we talked about the Megalopolis trailer. Turns
Mm-hmm.
out it was bullshit.
Really?
Turns out
AI?
the trailer is AI made.
Who
It
did
was
it?
not real. I don't know, but all we know is that the quotes were not real. They were AI made.
I was like,
So,
anyone who did this and said this to him has to be a certified idiot. Like, there's no way that was like real.
and people were going back. It took like a day or two to people be like, they didn't say that back then. That guy didn't say that.
53 years
So
ago. I mean, that's kind of hard to find that stuff and verify it, right?
people were verifying it quick, and turns out whoever did it, they just typed in the prompt, "Hey AI, what were the negative quotes about uh, Coppola? I can't pronounce his name.
Coppola.
Coppola's movie back then,
Coppola, blah,
you
blah.
know." And so this is just another example of how AI is not the boogeyman people think it is. But yeah, I just had to say that because we talked about it last week, and it took me
Yeah.
forever to put that video up. I mean, not last week, a couple weeks ago. It took me
Yeah.
forever to put that video up because YouTube kept blocking it, and so finally got it up yesterday. So
You know, Nick Cage is a Coppola, right?
yeah, I do. Yeah, he changed his name so he could forge his own path. You
That
know?
didn't work.
And fun fact, he took his name from the comic book character Luke Cage.
Luke Cage, yeah.
Boom.
Also
Marvel's
did
Luke
work.
Cage.
None of it worked. He was like the guy for like 15 years, dude, from Con Air on. Let's be real.
Dear God, yes. Yes.
And he
then
won 2
became like
Oscars,
a
dude. He was no
caricature of
joke.
himself. Yeah. He was the guy, man, for
Leaving
sure.
Las Vegas, I like it.
Toupee
Him
and
and
all.
Elizabeth Shue. That's a great movie.
Toupee and all, man.
So, Jenna Ortega, and I know,
is tired of girl boss movies.
I just saw a movie with her recently with Martin. Who's the guy from The Hobbit who's also in Sherlock? What's his name? Martin Freeman.
Yep.
He played her teacher, and they were like thinking of having a relationship, and he's married, and they didn't, and she's underage, and it was just weird. It was just weird.
Well, she just said someone asked her if she would play a female Edward Scissorhands, and she responded by saying no, she'd rather, women have their own heroes. Basically, what we've been saying about all this
She also
race
said
and
something about
gender
like
swapping.
woke stuff recently too, and I'm like, dang girl, like you better be. I think she feels like she's big enough to where she's not going to be touched,
She better
and
be careful.
that's what I'm
Watch your
saying.
back. We're joking, but we're really not. Watch your back. Your career might be over after this.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
want you to watch that movie with her and Martin Freeman, dude, just so you can feel awkward the entire time. It's like this is wild.
just so you can feel awkward.
It's wild. All right, I'll say that. So is there a trailer out for Megalopolis then, other than that fake
There's
one?
a new one apparently. There's a new
I,
one, but
I have to probably go look at Francis's Instagram to go look at it.
yeah. But
Do you think it? Do you think? All right. So here's the thing. Do you think it's going to be good?
I think it's going to be what's it called? A conversation piece. Whether it's good, whether it's
Like
bad.
Tenet?
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure everybody thinks that's bad.
No, because I feel like Tenet, along with time, is kind of how like Inception was, where you're like, you see it the first time, you're like, what the heck did I just watch?
But no, everybody agrees like Inception is one of his greatest films, whereas Tenet
Tenet
is
got a
like
lot of good
that's
critical love, though.
I think I was going to say something vulgar. I think a lot of critics are just,
Oh,
on his
yeah,
on his, they just need to
yeah.
chill out. All right. Anything
On his
Christopher Nolan is
dick
like,
is
"Oh
what
my
you're
god."
saying.
Yeah. Yeah. They just need to calm down, you know. I'm pretty sure Tenet is like his lowest point. All right?
It
Pretty
was
sure that's
indecipherable, and I've watched it again, and
you
I was like, I got more questions than answers compared to the first time, and I was better off just watching it once because then I'm like, all right, it is what it is. I'm okay with that.
yeah. You're the only person I know who's watched it multiple times. And of course I see people online who have their film essays who are like, "Oh, the point of Tenet is to not get it," or "Tenet
Well,
is
that's what
really
he
a
said.
good movie."
He's like, he doesn't
Stop,
even understand it. I'm like, if it comes from him, he's like, it's not meant to make sense. I'm like, then why make it? What's the point?
stop, man. You're just trying to double back and try to save face. Stop, just stop. I ain't falling for
It was something that was, I think he was taking risks, which I appreciated, and it just didn't land.
Yeah. Just admit your brother's the secret sauce to all your films. Jonathan Nolan, you always write with him. And the one time you didn't, the movie was a bust. All right? Just admit it. Just admit it. All right?
Did he do Prestige?
Yes.
Did he
Jonathan
do
Nolan is the
Did he
secret
do
sauce.
Oppenheimer?
I do not know exactly. I think he did.
All right, well, let's take a
Let's
look.
check. Let's check. Because I think
Now I feel like
he was a
I feel
part.
like I have to check, right? Because we got to give this guy some credit. All right, let's take a look.
Oh, he did not.
All right, that was good. All right, let's see if let's
But
look
he
at the
had
other movies.
co-writers. He had co-writers though. He
Doesn't
had
matter. You
Kyber
said
and
his
Martin
brother's the
Sherwin.
secret sauce.
His brother is the secret sauce. Check out his old shit. Brother always writes with him.
All right. What's the movie between Prestige and Inception with him? Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is Batman written by Jonathan Nolan?
Yes.
It's not. Not the first
What?
one.
Which one? Oh, not the yeah. The first one, nah.
Bob Kane did it, and Chris Nolan and David Goyer.
Well, Bob Kane is the creator of Batman. He just
Yes.
gets a writing credit, period. But David S. Goyer, he is like the genre king. He's also the co-creator and writer of what's that show on Apple that we like?
Which one?
The sci-fi
Foundation.
one, Foundation. David S. Goyer has made so many like great films that we love, comic movies. Blade, he's responsible. Him and Wesley Snipes wrote Blade together. Well, he wrote Blade, and Wesley Snipes made Blade to what he is. The
He did
style and everything like that.
Hellraiser too. The
Yeah,
Sandman. He did the Sandman.
Yes, sir. David S. Goyer is a phenom, my friend. Not a good director, but he's a great writer.
Dude, Foundation's taking forever to finish. Like, I'm getting tired of this wait.
I know. How long has it been? Like 2, 3 years?
No, it's just been over a year now.
Oh, really? It feels like forever.
I mean, I know that strike probably had a lot to do with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
coming back next year. That's cool. Um, dude, that
Taking
last
forever.
season was better than the first one.
Yeah, yeah. You know what was I just finished, and I know
Mm,
I'm gonna get some hate for this.
mm,
I just finished the second season of House of Dragon.
that was awful. They just want to do shock
Bro,
value with all the incest in there. I'm serious.
they didn't even
That's the
have
only thing I
that this
remember.
season. They didn't even have that for this season. It was just so
No.
boring. Nothing happened. Like
Oh,
I
he
know they wanted to.
Goyer
What's up?
did Da Vinci's Demons too. That was pretty good.
Yeah, bro, that was a good show. I didn't finish it entirely, but I finished most of it. And that's
Yeah,
the show I told myself I gotta pick back up. Da Vinci's Demons. Thank you for that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Da Vinci's Demons was a sleeper show that no one got onto, but it was so
It was very well done. It's
good.
10 years old now, dude.
Who cares? It's so
It's so wild that
good.
yeah.
I gotta finish it. I'm gonna finish it.
All
I'm
right,
gonna finish it.
now let's talk about Borderlands.
All right, this will be the last thing. Borderlands. The only thing I wanted to talk about with Borderlands was Yule Bowl. I don't know if you remember this guy. This guy wanted to talk shit about Borderlands, and then lost out on money for. So basically, all right, this is how it goes. Yule Boll, for those who don't know, is a director from the early 2000s who just did horrible movie after horrible movie. And it always seemed to be like a what's it called? A video game adaptation movie.
Like Blood
Like
Rain?
for oh, did he do that? I think he did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
check that out.
Yeah, I think you did
But
Blood Rain, dude.
like basically he talked shit about what's it called? Um Borderlands. He was like, my movie did more than this.
Stop. I'm done. He has made the worst movies ever.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah, he did Blood Rain. Oh God.
Dude, like he's done. Hold up. Let me show this because I gotta show this. It's so bad. He's done some. What's the Jason Statham one I'm thinking of that he did? It was like a Dungeons and Dragon type movie. In the name of the
Oh,
king.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And I actually saw that movie in class on like the last day of school. So bad. Like his movies are so bad. And they're like laughably
Prisoners
bad.
of the Sun. That looks fun. C2 is a 2.2. We should
Bro.
watch that. C2.
He made a sequel to the In the Name of the King? Really? What? Bro. Oh no, no,
Blubberella.
no. That's just a rhythm.
Hey, if we
Blubber.
did an average of all his movies, it would be like a 3.
I know. This guy just makes
Hey, look,
so
Blood
much
Rain.
bad movies. Yeah, he did make a sequel to In the Name of the King. Oh my gosh, bro. Blood Rain, Alone in the Dark.
What's his best movie? Dude, that one has a
Damn,
1.2.
1.5, 2, bro, and look, this this dude wanted to talk shit about Borderlands, and then on top of that, not only did he talk shit about Borderlands, after he talked shit about the first weekend that Borderlands brought in money, he lost his crowdfunding for a movie that he wanted to make. So he's not able to make it now. His crowdfunding campaign was for $2.5 million to do a sequel to his Golden Raspberry Winter Postal movie, and it grossed less than $150,000 worldwide when it came out.
I've never even heard of that movie.
Me neither. It's supposedly his worst movie ever,
That's saying
and
a
it
lot after
only
seeing that list.
It only raised $850 by 16 backers. So you spoke too soon,
50
buddy.
bucks. So average donation was almost $50. uh,
You spoke
and they're
too
like, you know
soon,
what?
my
Let's just.
friend.
I want my $50 back. Just go to Buffalo Wild Wings or something instead. Go to
I mean, it says it
Chili's,
right here.
dude. That's 2 nights to
Borderlands made.
Chili's.
Yeah, it is. Like, this dude, the first week of Borderlands, it made $8 million. He went on Twitter and said, "My movies were rated R and made more money than this."
It's not
And
true. But Borderlands is a flop. Whoever did it,
oh yeah,
why? It's not meant to
apparently,
be live
the
action.
Crow remake is the worst flop of the year. It was Borderlands, now it's the Crow
Did you
remake.
watch? Did you see that? I didn't see it.
Oh God, no!
Okay.
But because it's done so bad, they're going to put it on streaming right away. I might check it out just to see how bad it is. Just to see how bad. Same thing with Borderlands. They're putting that out right away on streaming soon. Might just check it out to see how bad it is.
All right.
Or I might just watch The Fall Guy again.
So,
That was a great
since I
movie.
picked Schindler's List and it was supposed to be your week, I'm going to give you criteria and you pick the movie. I want the
So,
worst best movie ever.
worst best movie.
Movies that everyone's like, oh, it's the best movie, but it's really not.
Oh, it's really not. Venom? Nah, let me not do that.
Oof.
Uh,
We can do that. I can waste some of my time watching Venom.
nah. I do have a movie in mind that I want you to watch to get your opinion of.
Mm.
It's called Judas and the Black Messiah.
What is that? I don't think I've. Is it
It's
like that
about
one with
the
Benedict
assassin.
Cumberbatch that came out recently? Who there were scam artists?
Nah, it's about the assassination of Fred Hampton.
Oh,
I want you to
when we
watch
watch this,
it. Yes.
and we're gonna
And
do
then the week
this.
after, I will give you your criteria.
Well, give me the criteria, and I'll watch both of them. How about that?
All right. So, a movie that people think is good, but it's actually bad. Joker.
That's a good one. All right,
Joker.
Joker.
And the only
Sounds
reason
good.
I say that is because the second one's coming out,
Yeah,
and everybody keeps telling me how good the
gosh.
first one was.
It's okay.
And I just keep rolling my eyes.
It's okay. I mean, it's not canon, but whatever. I don't think DC cares anymore about canon. They just want to take
No,
all
they
their
don't.
stuff and burn it. Guys.
Yes.
Everyone knows how much I like Batman. I'm wearing a Batman shirt, so
So those two.
okay. All right, sounds good.
We'll do one week and do one another.
Sounds good.
All right, my nomads. Well, I hope you learned something. Check out Schindler's List before you die, but you could take your time like I did with me, like I did with my watch through. All right. Hope you learned something. Peace. Be creative.